In the beginning, before the buzzing of modern cities and the hum of engines, before the world was mapped and measured, there rose on the banks of the Euphrates a city of impossible ambition, a city whispered about in scriptures, feared in chronicles, and remembered in ruins. A place where kings reshaped reality, where priests read destinies written in the stars, where walls touched the heavens, and where the very idea of empire was forged anew. Tonight, we journey deep, far deeper than the usual retelling. Not the simplified Babylon of legend, nor the caricature of decadence often painted by its rivals, but the living, breathing civilization that once pulsed at the heart of the ancient world. A city where power, knowledge, magic, astronomy, mathematics, divine kingship, and brutal politics collided to create something unprecedented. Babylon was not merely a city, it was a statement, a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when unrestrained imagination met absolute authority. But to discover its secrets, we must begin long before Babylon reached its golden age. In an age when tribes and nomadic rulers clashed across Mesopotamia, when the land between the rivers was a mosaic of warring city-states, Akkad, Ur, Uruk, Kish, each vying for supremacy, Babylon, at first, was barely noticeable, a modest settlement overshadowed by giants. Yet destiny, as Babylonian priests believed, moves like the hidden currents of the Euphrates, slow, subtle, yet unstoppable. It was from this unremarkable origin that Babylon began its rise, carried forward by a king whose name would echo throughout eternity. Hammurabi, a ruler as feared as he was admired, a king who would carve into stone a code of laws so profound that its influence stretches silently across our own legal systems today. But Hammurabi's Babylon was not only a place of law, it was a strategic, cunning machine of expansion. While other kings fought their battles head-on, Hammurabi manipulated alliances, pitted enemies against one another, and struck precisely when they were weakest. He was ruthless, calculated, and astonishingly effective. In just a few decades, he transformed Babylon from a minor city into the dominant power of Mesopotamia. Yet, this is only the beginning of the secrets we unravel tonight. Behind Babylon's political power stood a world of gods, many gods whose temples dominated the skyline, whose festivals shaped the calendar, and whose voices, priests claimed, could determine the fate of kings. Chief among them was Marduk, a deity who rose from relative obscurity to become the supreme god of the Babylonian pantheon. His ascension was no coincidence. It mirrored Babylon's rising power. As the city grew, so too did its god. The priests crafted myths that placed Marduk at the center of creation itself, rewriting cosmic history so that Babylon became not merely a city of men, but the axis of divine order. This belief fueled the city's ambition. Every structure, every ritual, every law traced back to the divine authority bestowed by Marduk. And towering above the city, like a man-made mountain, was the legendary ziggurat, Etemenanki, a name meaning house of the foundation of heaven and earth. Some have claimed it inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Whether legend or truth, its sheer scale was undeniable, visible from miles across the desert. To the Babylonians, it was the meeting point between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. But monumental architecture was only one layer of Babylon's genius. Beneath its temples and palaces lay a city of astonishing scientific sophistication. Babylonian astronomers mapped the heavens with meticulous precision, charting the movements of planets, predicting eclipses, and developing mathematical systems that would later influence Greek, Islamic, and even modern astronomy. They recognized patterns long before others dared to look beyond superstition. To them, the night sky was not a mystery, but a text, one written by the gods, waiting to be interpreted. These astronomers were also astrologers, and in Babylon, the line between science and magic was thin, almost invisible. The movements of Jupiter or Venus were believed to shape the destinies of kings, and so Babylon became the birthplace of astrology as we know it. In its libraries, vast collections of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform generations of scholars recorded their findings, building a tradition of knowledge passed down over 1,000 years. Yet even the most brilliant civilizations struggle with the darkness within. For all its majesty, Babylon was a city of contradictions. It was prosperous, yet oppressive. Its kings claimed divine authority, but their power was constantly threatened by rivals, by rebellion, by the unyielding environment, and sometimes by the very gods whose will they claimed to serve. Perhaps the greatest contradiction came during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, the king whose name has become synonymous with Babylon's golden age. Under his rule, Babylon became the wealthiest, most advanced city on earth. He expanded its walls until they stretched for miles. He built palaces of unprecedented scale, adorned with vibrant glazed bricks and shimmering blue tiles. And he commissioned the creation of legendary wonders, including what many believe were the famed Hanging Gardens, an artificial mountain of greenery rising above the desert, watered by ingenious mechanical systems that defied the arid climate. But Nebuchadnezzar was not simply a builder. He was a conqueror. His armies marched on Jerusalem, captured its elite, and transported thousands to Babylon, a historical event that left an indelible mark on religious traditions across the world. Under his reign, Babylon became a multicultural empire, the crossroads of the ancient world. Knowledge from distant lands flowed into its libraries. Traders from across the Near East, Egypt, Anatolia, and beyond filled its markets. It was a melting pot of languages, beliefs, and ambitions. And yet, for every triumph, Babylon concealed a shadow. Behind the gleaming walls lay political conspiracies, palace intrigue, and struggles for succession. Priests wielded immense influence and could elevate or destroy kings. Prophecies were manipulated for political gain. Omens were interpreted according to the needs of the moment. In Babylon, even the divine could be used as a weapon. When Cyrus the Great and the Persian Empire approached Babylon in the 6th century BCE, a surprising secret enabled the city to fall almost without a fight. Despite its reputation for impregnability, Babylon harbored internal divisions, disillusioned elites, and a populace weary of its rulers. To the Babylonians, this was not merely a political shift, but the fulfillment of prophecies long recorded in their omen tablets. Babylon fell because the gods had withdrawn their favor, or so the priests claimed. But the city did not die. Far from it. Under the Persians, Greeks, and later the Parthians, Babylon remained a center of knowledge, trade, and religion. Its temples continued to function for centuries after its political power faded. Even Alexander the Great, who dreamed of making Babylon the capital of his world-spanning empire, recognized its unparalleled prestige. It was here, in a palace overlooking the Euphrates, that Alexander fell ill and died another of Babylon's mysterious historical echoes. But every civilization has a final sunset. Centuries of neglect, shifting trade routes, environmental change, and warfare slowly turned Babylon from a city of wonders into a ruin. The once towering ziggurat became a mound of eroded bricks. The palaces crumbled. The canals dried. But its legacy, the laws of Hammurabi, the astronomy of its scholars, the myths of its priests, the imagery of its gardens, and the echoes of its empire continued to shape cultures long after the city itself was abandoned. And so tonight, our journey is not merely archaeological. It is psychological, spiritual, and intellectual. We peel back layers of myth and propaganda, rediscover the forgotten achievements and secret rituals, and uncover the truths behind legends. Babylon was many things: beautiful, terrifying, innovative, decadent, wise, and flawed. And its secrets reveal not just the story of one ancient city, but the story of humankind itself, our ambition, our creativity, our longing for meaning, our hunger for power, and our eternal desire to reach for the heavens. But this is only the first step into a saga far larger, far deeper than the ruins we can see today. To truly uncover the secrets of ancient Babylon, We must explore the hidden mechanisms that kept it alive, the unspoken beliefs that shaped its worldview, and the long-buried events that transformed it into the legend it became. And so, to understand Babylon's ascent, we must step inside its very bones, into the rhythm of daily life that pulsed through its streets long before its fame spread across empires. Picture the early morning as the first light reflects off the Euphrates. Fishermen haul in their nets. Merchants set out goods, dates, barley, copper ingots, fine textiles dyed in rare colors. The smell of baking bread swirls with incense drifting from nearby temples, and above it all, the watchful eyes of priests, scribes, and officials observe like living instruments of the state. Babylon was not merely a city of kings, it was a city of systems. Its economy ran on grain, trade, and temple wealth. Its bureaucracy was a masterpiece of organization, and its people, farmers, artisans, soldiers, merchants, slaves, nobles, each lived within a hierarchy that both empowered and constrained their lives. What made Babylon extraordinary, however, was how its people perceived their role within this structure. Life was not random. It was woven into the cosmic order established by the gods. When a Babylonian scribe pressed wedge-shaped marks into a clay tablet, he was not only documenting taxes or contracts, he was participating in a tradition that stretched back thousands of years. Cuneiform writing made Babylon one of the intellectual capitals of the ancient world. Literacy was rare, but its impact was enormous. Contracts, property rights, marriage agreements, debt systems, receipts, astronomical observations, medical texts, all preserved in durable clay. It was through these tablets that Babylonian knowledge traveled, slowly and silently, across centuries. But the heart of Babylon was its religion. Every morning, at sunrise, rituals unfolded in temples dedicated to dozens of gods. Priests washed the statues, dressed them in fine garments, offered food, burned incense, and recited hymns. The gods were treated as living beings. Their statues were not symbolic, they were their physical embodiment on earth. Neglecting them was unthinkable. To disrespect a god's statue was to risk cosmic disaster. This belief shaped everything from politics to architecture, and no temple was more important than the Esagila, the house of Marduk. It was here that Babylonian kings underwent rituals of legitimacy. During the New Year festival, the king himself was stripped of royal regalia and slapped by the high priest. If the king's tears flowed, a sign that Marduk accepted his humility, the empire was blessed for another year. If the king did not cry, the omen was disastrous. This ritual reveals something profound. Unlike many ancient rulers who claimed divine status, Babylonian kings were not gods. They were intermediaries, servants of the divine. Their power came from obedience, not divinity, and in that obedience lay the key to maintaining cosmic order. But Babylon's cosmic order extended beyond religion. It touched the very environment. Take the Euphrates River, life-giver, destroyer, and eternal challenge. Its floods could nourish farms or wipe out entire villages. Babylonian engineers built elaborate canal systems, levees, and irrigation networks to tame the unpredictable waters. Controlling the river meant controlling survival itself. And in a world where survival equaled legitimacy, the king's ability to maintain these systems was crucial. When Hammurabi expanded these networks, he wasn't only improving agriculture. He was offering stability, prosperity, and proof of divine favor. The more the land yielded, the more the people believed their rulers were aligned with the will of the gods. In this way, engineering, spirituality, and politics merged into one. By the time Hammurabi's dynasty ended, Babylon had established a legacy of governance and administration unmatched in the region. Yet empires rise and fall like the shifting winds of the desert. After Hammurabi's death, Babylon endured invasions, internal fractures, and foreign rule. For centuries, the city was ruled by outsiders, from Kassites to Assyrians. And here lies one of Babylon's strangest secrets. Even when conquered, Babylon was never truly defeated. Foreign rulers adopted Babylonian customs, worshipped its gods, learned its languages, and sought legitimacy by claiming Babylon's heritage. To rule, Babylon was to inherit the mantle of Mesopotamian civilization. This magnetism, this cultural gravity, was unlike anything else in the ancient world. It shaped the Middle East for millennia. But the period that truly revealed Babylon's unmatched grandeur came with the rise of its most celebrated king, Nebuchadnezzar II. Under his rule in the 6th century BCE, Babylon entered its golden age, shimmering like a jewel set in the desert. His building projects were vast and transformative. He rebuilt the city with immense walls that inspired legends. The processional way, a grand avenue lined with gleaming bricks, guided travelers toward the Ishtar Gate, a magnificent entrance adorned with deep blue tiles and images of bulls, dragons, and lions. For pilgrims approaching the city, the sight must have been overwhelming. The Ishtar Gate, with its vibrant colors and mythic creatures, stood as a declaration. Babylon was the heart of the world. Inside those walls, Nebuchadnezzar constructed palaces of dazzling luxury. Grand halls with cedar roofs, gold-leafed door frames, carved stone reliefs, and expansive courtyards filled with gardens. Every structure proclaimed power. Every brick bore inscriptions of Nebuchadnezzar's name, ensuring that his presence would echo across eternity. And then there were the Hanging Gardens. Though archaeologists still debate their existence and exact location, the ancient descriptions describe a masterpiece of green terraces rising above the city. Verdant trees, exotic plants, cascading water, an oasis in the harsh Mesopotamian climate. If real, the gardens demonstrated Babylonian engineering far ahead of its time. Water-lifting devices, pressure channels, and stone-reinforced terraces that could support enormous weight. But perhaps the greatest achievement under Nebuchadnezzar was not architectural, it was cultural. Babylon became a global crossroads, attracting astronomers, mathematicians, healers, merchants, diplomats, and scholars from across the world. The intellectual traditions that had been developing for centuries reached new heights. Babylonian astronomers charted celestial cycles with unprecedented accuracy. They identified lunar solar patterns, predicted eclipses, and tracked planetary movements using systematic observations recorded for generations. Their mathematical models, written in cuneiform on thousands of tablets, were astonishingly sophisticated. They used base 6-0 mathematics, an enduring legacy still present in our time measurement today. And astral knowledge was not mere science, it was bound to prophecy. To understand the stars was to read the fate of nations. Kings relied on these predictions before going to war. Priests interpreted omens in the skies as messages from the gods. Babylon scholars wielded intellectual power that shaped political decisions. But beneath this brilliance lay tension. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon was wealthy, but wealth often breeds inequality. Priests controlled vast temple estates. Nobles accumulated land, leaving commoners vulnerable to debt. Soldiers returned from campaigns with foreign slaves, altering the social order. Multiculturalism enriched the city, but also created friction between groups with competing traditions. When Nebuchadnezzar died, the power he built began to fracture. His successors struggled to maintain unity. Political intrigue spread through the palace like wildfire. Factions formed, some loyal to priests, some to military leaders, others to foreign powers. And as always in Babylon, the gods were invoked in every political maneuver. Priests interpreted omens to justify coups. Prophets warned of divine wrath. Conspirators claimed celestial sanction. Babylon was a city where faith was fused with ambition, and divine symbolism became a political tool. It was this internal instability that opened the door for a new empire rising in the east, the Persians. Under Cyrus the Great, they advanced into Mesopotamia with a force unlike anything Babylon had faced. But Cyrus knew what others did not. Babylon's strength came not only from its walls, but from its people's belief in their divine order. So instead of brute force, He used strategy. Cyrus exploited divisions within the city. He aligned with disenfranchised priests, disillusioned nobles, and local factions yearning for stability. When his army approached Babylon, the city did not erupt in flames. It did not become a battlefield. Instead, it surrendered calmly, almost eerily, ushering in a new era under Persian rule. To the Babylonians, the fall of their city was interpreted through the lens of prophecy. The gods had withdrawn their favor. But Babylon's story did not end. Not yet. Even under Persian control, it remained a cultural and religious powerhouse. Its temples continued to operate. Its astronomers continued their work. Its merchants continued their trade. And its reputation remained unmatched. When Alexander the Great reached Babylon centuries later, he was captivated. He saw in Babylon not a conquered city, but a potential capital for his vast empire. He admired its libraries, its architecture, its traditions of scholarship. And it was here, amid Babylon's grandeur, that Alexander spent the final days of his life. Some say Babylon claimed him. Others say he surrendered to its allure. But what truly happened in those final days remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. And so, the secrets of ancient Babylon stretch far beyond its walls and gardens. They intersect with empires, religions, science, myth, and human ambition itself. To uncover them fully, we must continue deeper into Babylon's hidden rituals, its mysterious omens, its lost libraries, its forbidden magic, and the final forces that drove the world's greatest city into silence. If we wish to understand the true essence of Babylon, we must step beyond its monuments and politics and explore what made its worldview so unique, so enduring, and so profoundly influential. For Babylon's greatest secret was not merely that it built wonders, it was that it built ideas. Ideas that shaped religion, mathematics, astronomy, kingship, magic, and the very notion of civilization. At the heart of these ideas lay the Babylonian relationship with time. Kings walked paths laid out by fate long before they were born. Events repeated in cycles just as seasons did, just as celestial bodies moved predictably across the heavens. This belief infused Babylonian life with a sense of order, a conviction that the universe was structured, comprehensible, and governed by laws both divine and mathematical. Perhaps this is why Babylon became a cradle of record-keeping. While other ancient societies recorded only what they deemed necessary, Babylon recorded everything: storms, grain yields, lunar phases, omens, eclipses, dreams, trade transactions, royal decrees, medical prescriptions, hymns, legal disputes, temple inventories, and even personal letters. These records were not kept for curiosity. They were kept because Babylonians believed that understanding patterns, whether in nature, economy, or politics, allowed humans to predict the future. This mindset laid the foundation for astrology. Babylonian astrologers believed that the universe communicated through signs: a red sky at dawn, a strange dream, an unusual position of Venus. These were not coincidences. They were messages, warnings, predictions. The gods, after all, would not speak plainly to mortals. They spoke through symbols, and it was the task of trained scholars to interpret those symbols and advise the king. In the dark, silent chambers of Babylon's temples, astrologers worked through the night. They climbed the steps of ziggurats to observe the sky. They wrote on clay tablets by lamplight, their calculations slow but precise. They developed star catalogs, identified constellations, and tracked planetary cycles with remarkable accuracy. Their observations laid the groundwork for later Greek and Roman astronomy. Even today, our zodiac signs echo the constellations first charted by Babylonian scholars. But astrology did not exist in isolation. It fed into medicine, agriculture, warfare, and statecraft. If Mars shone brightly, war was imminent. If Jupiter aligned with the moon, wealth and prosperity were expected. If an eclipse shadowed the land, priests rushed to perform elaborate rituals meant to redirect disaster. And when omens predicted danger for the king, a strange practice unfolded: the substitute king ritual. In this ritual, a humble man, often a prisoner or deserter, was placed on the throne temporarily. He wore royal garments, ate royal meals, and endured royal anxieties. Return to power. To modern eyes, such practices might seem superstitious. They believed deeply that divine forces shaped reality, and that through ritual, sacrifice, and knowledge, those forces could be negotiated with. And nowhere was this negotiation more intense than in Babylon's most sacred ritual, the Akitu, or New Year festival. The Akitu was far more than a celebration. It was a cosmic drama, reenacted annually to ensure that creation itself continued. Over several days, priests recited the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic that elevated Marduk to supremacy. In this myth, Marduk defeats the chaos dragon Tiamat, divides her body to form the heavens and the earth, and establishes order. By retelling this myth each year, the Babylonians believed they were renewing the universe. Creation was not a one-time event. It was a process that required maintenance. During the festival, the king underwent a ritual of humility. He entered the holy sanctuary, removed his crown, bowed before Marduk's statue, and declared his unworthiness. The high priest confronted him, recounting any failures from the year. Then, he slapped the king hard across the face. If the king's eyes welled with tears, it was a sign that Marduk forgave him. If he did not cry, the gods rejected him. No army, no wealth, no political power could save a king whom the gods had abandoned. This annual humiliation might seem shocking, but it reveals the delicate balance of power in Babylon. Kings ruled by divine permission. Without the priests and the will of Marduk, the king was nothing. Babylon's political system was not an autocracy, it was a triad of king, priests, and gods. And the priests, wielding knowledge and ritual authority, held immense influence behind the scenes. This dynamic becomes essential to understanding Babylon's later decline. For when rulers forgot this balance, or dismissed it, the city faltered. But while priests held spiritual power, Babylon's scribes held intellectual dominion. Their clay tablets preserved an enormous range of knowledge. Medical texts described herbal remedies, surgical procedures, and diagnoses of ailments both physical and spiritual. There were tablets for exorcisms, curing fevers, treating wounds, interpreting dreams, and even reviving the sick using mixtures of botanicals and incantations. To Babylonians, illness was often caused by malevolent forces, demons, curses, or angry ancestors. Therefore, healing required both physical treatment and spiritual cleansing. A doctor might apply a poultice of crushed date seeds and oils, while a priest recited incantations to expel the demon believed to be causing harm. This fusion of medicine and magic shaped Mesopotamian healing practices for millennia. Other tablets recorded mathematics that astonishes modern scholars. The Babylonians solved quadratic equations, understood geometric relationships, and used sophisticated arithmetic for taxation, construction, and astronomy. Their base 60 number system remains alive in how we measure time and angles today. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. But perhaps one of Babylon's least understood secrets was its relationship with magic. Not the fictional magic of fantasy, but a structured, codified system of incantations, rituals, protective amulets, and divination techniques used by both elites and commoners. Magic, in Babylon, was not superstition. It was a science of the unseen, a toolkit for navigating a dangerous world filled with invisible forces. Clay figurines of demons and spirits were buried beneath houses to ward off evil. Incantation bowls, scribbled with spiraling text, were placed in doorways. Talismans depicting Pazuzu, a terrifying demon with wings and claws, were used not to summon evil but to drive other malevolent beings away. To the Babylonians, the supernatural was part of daily reality. and mastering it was essential to survival. But even magic had limits. When the forces of history shifted, when empires clashed, even the most powerful rituals could not save Babylon from the ambitions of rising powers. The Assyrians, fierce conquerors from the north, repeatedly threatened Babylon's independence. At times they ruled it. At times Babylon rebelled. These conflicts were violent and devastating. Cities burned, temples fell, kings were dragged through the streets. Yet through it all, Babylon endured. Its cultural and religious prestige was so great that even the brutal Assyrian kings respected it, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes resentfully. They wanted to rule Babylon, but they dared not destroy it permanently. To do so would be to uproot the foundation of Mesopotamian identity. Still, tensions escalated. One Assyrian king, Sennacherib, eventually lost patience. After a rebellion in Babylon, he unleashed fury upon the city, reducing it to rubble. Temples burned, palaces collapsed, the sacred ziggurat was torn down. For a moment, it seemed Babylon's story had ended. But Babylon's resilience was unmatched. Within decades, Sennacherib's successors restored the city, rebuilt its temples, and reinstated its religious traditions. Babylon rose again, proving that ideas and culture can outlast even the most devastating destruction. This restoration set the stage for the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Babylon's final and greatest era. Under kings like Nabopolassar and his son Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon claimed its rightful place as the greatest city in the world. But as Babylon soared, shadows lengthened on the horizon. Eventually, the Persian Empire emerged with unprecedented power and ambition. When he turned his gaze toward Babylon, the outcome seemed inevitable. Yet Cyrus did not rely on military force alone. He was a strategist of both war and psychology. Babylon was wealthy but divided. Its rulers were unpopular. Its priests were alienated. Its citizens were restless. Cyrus exploited every weakness. When he entered the city, he presented himself not as a conqueror. He respected Marduk. He restored temples. He portrayed his rule as divinely ordained, and the people accepted him. Babylon became part of a vast empire, stretching from the Aegean to India. But it remained significant culturally, religiously, intellectually. Even under Persian control, Babylon scholars continued to record astronomical observations. Its temples continued rituals that had endured for centuries. Its archives continued to grow. But as time passed, a slow quieting began. Greek influence spread. Trade routes shifted. Political power moved elsewhere. Babylon became more symbol than center. Then came Alexander the Great. His arrival marked the city's final moment of global significance. To Alexander, Babylon was not merely a conquered city. It was the heart of the world, the ideal place to build a unified empire. He planned to restore the ziggurat, expand the city, and make it the capital of his vast dominion. But fate intervened. Alexander fell ill and died in Babylon at the age of 32. To the Babylonians, this was no coincidence. They whispered that the gods had spoken, that even the greatest conqueror could not claim the throne of Marduk. After Alexander's death, his generals carved up his empire. Babylon fell under the control of the Seleucids, then the Parthians. Its population dwindled, its temples emptied, its canals dried. By the 1st century CE, the city that once dazzled the world was a shadow of itself. Eventually, wind and sand claimed what remained. But Babylon never truly vanished. Its ideas lived on in language, religion, mathematics, astronomy, and myth. Its stories traveled through scripture. Its symbols shaped later civilizations. Even its ruins whispered to the modern world. The secrets of Babylon are not simply secrets of an ancient city. They are secrets of humanity, of our quest for meaning, our hunger for power, our genius for invention, and our eternal yearning to touch the heavens. And there is still more to uncover. We have not yet explored Babylon's lost libraries, its forbidden texts, its rumored occult practices, its internal political battles, its hidden injustices, its final decline, and the psychological legacy it left behind. There are more secrets waiting beneath the sands. To fully grasp the depth of Babylon's influence, we must journey into its most sacred and least understood realm, the world of knowledge. Hidden behind its golden gates and towering walls were archives of extraordinary scale libraries, containing tens of thousands of clay tablets. These weren't mere collections of stories. They were repositories of humanity's earliest scientific, religious, economic, and philosophical thought. But unlike modern libraries, where books sit openly on shelves, Babylon's knowledge was guarded, access was restricted. Certain texts were reserved only for the highest priests or trained scribes. Knowledge was power, and controlling that knowledge meant controlling the empire. One of Babylon's greatest secrets lies in these ancient tablets: the existence of specialized classes of scholars, known collectively as the Ummanu. These were no ordinary scribes. They were experts in astronomy, mathematics, divination, medicine, and ritual magic. They had their own lineages, passed down from father to son. They studied for decades to master the enormous complexity of Babylon's intellectual traditions. Among these scholars were the Tupsharu, the scribes who documented everything. There were the Asu, the physicians trained in herbal medicine and surgical procedures. There were the Ashipu, exorcists tasked with driving out malevolent spirits. And there were the Baru, the diviners who interpreted omens from the stars, from dreams, from the behavior of animals, and even from the appearance of sacrificed organs. Nothing in Babylon was random. But one of the strangest and most profound practices of Babylonian divination was hepatoscopy, the reading of livers. The liver was believed to be the seat of life and a conduit for divine messages. The shapes, bumps, and textures of the organ corresponded to specific omens. On clay liver models found by archaeologists covered in cuneiform instructions, we see how meticulous the Babylonians were. A small indentation could signify danger to the king. A stretched lobe could predict military victory. A missing mark could foretell famine or plague. This system, like many in Babylon, was not purely mystical. It was based on thousands of recorded observations. If a certain condition of the liver frequently preceded disaster, that pattern was logged. Over centuries, these correlations accumulated into complex manuals. The priests didn't simply guess, they referenced extensive data sets. This fusion of spirituality and empirical observation defined Babylonian thought. But beyond physical omens, the Babylonians also paid close attention to dreams. Dream interpreters followed a tradition called wanairomancy, where visions were analyzed like coded messages. The Babylonian dream books, some of which survive today, contain thousands of examples. If a man dreams his teeth fall out, misfortune awaits his household. If he dreams he ascends a staircase, good fortune is coming. If he dreams a lion lies peacefully beside him, a powerful ally approaches. The belief was simple. The gods communicated through the subconscious. Dreams were not accidents, they were warnings or promises. But while Babylon sought signs from the heavens and omens from the earth, it also produced knowledge grounded in pure logic. Mathematics was one of its greatest intellectual pursuits. Clay tablets reveal calculations for building canals, constructing ziggurats, and managing agricultural output. Babylonian geometry allowed them to divide land, compute interest, and predict eclipses with extraordinary skill. Their numerical system, base 60, was elegant and efficient. It allowed easy division into many whole number fractions, making it ideal for measurements. And it survived millennia. Every time you glance at a clock, you engage with a living legacy of Babylonian numeracy. Yet, their most impressive mathematical feats emerged in astronomy. Babylonian scholars recognized patterns in planetary motion centuries before the Greeks formalized them. They developed methods to predict planetary positions using mathematical sequences. They tracked the Saros cycle, enabling precise predictions of solar and lunar eclipses. This systematic observation made Babylon the first true astronomical civilization. But while Babylon excelled in knowledge, it was also a center of myths and mysteries. Stories passed down through oral tradition preserved the spiritual fabric of Mesopotamia. Tales of heroes, monsters, and gods filled Babylonian life with meaning. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, was copied and studied in Babylon's scribal schools. But Babylon's myths held deeper significance. They reflected humanity's earliest attempts to grapple with existential questions. Why do we die? What is the nature of the soul? How did the world begin? In the Enuma Elish, the gods emerged from primordial chaos. Tiamat, the monstrous sea dragon, threatened creation. Marduk rose to challenge her, forming the world from her remains. This story wasn't just mythology, it was political theology. It established Marduk's supremacy and legitimized Babylon's claim to rule the world. Through myth, politics, and religion blended seamlessly. As we wander through Babylon's symbolic landscape, we find more secrets of its inner workings, especially in its legendary architecture. Let us return to the ziggurat, the massive stepped pyramid that dominated the skyline. The Etemenanki wasn't merely a tower, it was a cosmological symbol. Its base represented the earth, its peak touched the heavens. Climbing the ziggurat was a symbolic ascent toward the divine. Priests used the ziggurat for observing the stars. The height provided a clearer view of the night sky. From there, they charted celestial events, connecting heaven and earth through mathematics and myth. Nearby stood the Esagila temple complex, where Marduk's statue resided. The Babylonians believed the gods quite literally lived in these temples. Workers maintained them as one would maintain a palace for a living king. Statues were bathed, clothed, and fed daily. This care was not metaphorical, it was believed to sustain the gods' presence. But perhaps the most enduring architectural mystery of Babylon is the Hanging Gardens. Were they truly built? If so, where? How did Babylonian engineers achieve something so seemingly impossible? One theory suggests the gardens were a kind of terraced mountain, built with stone, a material rare in Mesopotamia. Another proposes that they were located in Nineveh, built by the Assyrians, but later attributed to Babylon. Yet a third theory holds that Nebuchadnezzar built them for his homesick wife, Amytis, to remind her of her mountainous homeland. If they existed, they would have required advanced irrigation technology, possibly an early screw pump or chain pump system to lift water from the Euphrates. Such engineering would have been revolutionary, centuries ahead of Greek descriptions of similar devices. But even if the gardens are a myth, they reveal something profound about Babylon. To the ancient world, Babylon symbolized the pinnacle of human creativity and ambition. It was a place where imagination became stone, where myth became architecture, where ritual became political power. Yet alongside these achievements, Babylon held darker secrets. Beneath the temples and palaces lay a world of suffering, often hidden from historical praise. Slavery was common. War captives were forced into labor. Debt could send entire families into bondage. Women, while enjoying more rights than in some ancient societies, still faced severe limitations. Remained a grim reality in times of hardship. And the justice system, though advanced, could be harsh. Hammurabi's code enforced strict penalties. An eye for an eye was not a metaphor, it was the law. Punishments ranged from mutilation to drowning. Yet these laws, harsh as they were, brought order to a world that desperately needed structure. The Babylonians believed justice was divine. Marduk himself sanctioned fairness. The king merely executed it. Still, Babylon's complexities did not shield it from decline. Over centuries, climate changes altered the course of the Euphrates. Agricultural lands became less fertile. Rival empires disrupted trade. Internal strife weakened the monarchy. By the time the Persians arrived, Babylon was powerful, but fragile. Cyrus the Great capitalized on these vulnerabilities. When he took the city, he framed it as a restoration of order. He respected Babylonian traditions and presented himself as chosen by Marduk. This political theater was brilliant and effective. Persian rule allowed Babylon's culture to continue, even flourish. But the world was changing. Greek ideas would soon challenge Babylonian thought. Roman expansion would reshape the ancient world. Trade routes would shift. And eventually, the sands would swallow the city that once dazzled the continents. Yet even as Babylon fell silent, its shadows spread across history. Its myths influenced Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. Its scientific legacy shaped Greek astronomy and later Islamic scholarship. Its legal principles informed later civilizations. Its cultural memory persisted as a symbol of ambition, decadence, wisdom, and downfall. Babylon became not only a historical city, but an archetype, a metaphor, a cautionary tale, a source of fascination, and still, more secrets remain below the surface. We have not yet explored the final centuries of Babylon's decline, the reasons its rituals faded, the truth behind Alexander's death, the fate of its last priests, or how its knowledge filtered into later civilizations. There is more to uncover, much more. And so, as Babylon expanded, it was not only armies and administrators who shaped its destiny, but an invisible force woven through its streets, its temples, and even the minds of its rulers. The idea that the city itself was divinely chosen. To live in Babylon was to walk through a landscape where every wall whispered of cosmic order, where every ritual reenacted the struggle between chaos and civilization. It was a place where the border between the human world and the realm of gods blurred each day at sunrise. The priests of Babylon believed themselves custodians of this fragile balance. In a world where drought, invasion, or plague could strike without warning, the rituals of the temple weren't simply symbolic. They were mechanisms for keeping the universe intact. And in this sacred system, few ceremonies were more important than the Akitu, the Grand New Year festival. For 12 days, Babylon transformed into a theater of creation, reenacting the primordial victory of Marduk over Tiamat, the dragon of chaos. Through these mythic performances, the people of Babylon believed they renewed the very foundation of the world. During this festival, the king himself was required to kneel before the high priest, stripped of his royal regalia. The priest would slap him hard across the face, testing his sincerity. If tears welled in the king's eyes, the gods were pleased. If not, it was a bad omen for the year to come. This ritual, strange and brutal to modern eyes, was not an act of humiliation, but a cosmic recalibration. The king had to be reminded that he did not rule by personal power, but only through divine favor. These ceremonies created a psychological architecture in Babylon, a sense that every person, from king to merchant to farmer, was part of a story larger than themselves. And for centuries, this shared belief unified the sprawling, diverse populations drawn into the Babylonian orbit. But beneath the city's spiritual grandeur lay another force that sustained it: knowledge. Babylon did not merely possess libraries. It engineered knowledge like a resource, cataloging the stars, calculating the orbits of planets, predicting eclipses with astonishing precision. They believed that what happened in the sky above reflected the fate of kings and nations. And so astronomers became guardians of destiny. Within the clay tablets, they left behind tablets baked by accident in the fires of conquest. Turning fragile mud into eternal records, we find detailed logs of astronomical cycles spanning centuries. Some scholars today argue that Babylon possessed the world's first scientific approach to long-term data collection. They wrote not only what they observed, but when, why, and under what conditions. They tested predictions against measurements. They refined their models. Knowledge was a civic institution, not a luxury, and this relentless recording of the heavens gave Babylon a hidden weapon: the power to forecast. Not storms or seasons, but omens, signs the gods encoded into the sky. Whether or not these omens had real predictive power, They shaped decisions of kings and generals, including the greatest conqueror of the ancient world, Alexander the Great. Even he, the man who broke empires and spanned continents, paused in Babylon to consult the city's astronomers before pressing eastward. In that moment, the destiny of the world bent around Babylon's ancient wisdom. But the secrets of Babylon were not confined to the stars. They also lived deep within the city's physical landscape, carved into stone, etched into tablets, embedded in the rituals of daily life. One such secret rarely discussed outside scholarly circles is the hidden architecture beneath the city. Babylon possessed not only monumental temples and walls, but an underground world. Canals, tunnels, chambers, and waterworks that allowed 1 million people to survive in a scorching Mesopotamian climate. The Euphrates River, which split the city in two, was both a blessing and a threat. It brought water, trade, and life. But it also flooded, destroyed, and demanded constant engineering. Babylon responded with innovation. Massive embankments lined with baked brick, sluice gates, controlled irrigation channels, and intricate canal systems that redirected water into the city's heart. Some believe these systems may have even fed the legendary Hanging Gardens. Imagine what this meant in an age before pumps, motors, or advanced hydraulics. Babylon not only tamed a wild river, it synchronized it with urban life. Water flowed beneath streets, around courtyards, into orchards, and through the city's heart like veins in a living organism. This engineered harmony between nature and civilization became another layer of Babylon's identity, a city that brought order to chaos. Yet for all its achievements, Babylon existed in a world of shifting alliances and great powers. The Assyrians, their northern neighbors, viewed Babylon not as a rival city, but as a symbol, one to be controlled, respected, or destroyed depending on the political weather. At times, the kings of Assyria presented themselves as protectors of Babylon's sacred traditions. At other times, they crushed rebellions with brutal precision. And in one infamous episode, Assyrian king Sennacherib ravaged the city so completely that he boasted of leaving it like a wasteland, where wild animals prowled. But Babylon's story did not end there. No matter how many times it was conquered, burned, or rebuilt, it resurfaced, renewed, like a phoenix from the ashes. This resilience gave rise to another mystery. Why was Babylon so impossible to erase? Some historians believe the answer lies in geography. Its position along trade routes made it too valuable to abandon. Others point to religion. The city was too sacred to destroy forever. But perhaps the real secret lies in the human spirit. For millennia, people from across Mesopotamia believed that civilization itself depended on Babylon's survival. And so, even after devastation, they returned to rebuild. And then came Nebuchadnezzar II, the ruler who would turn Babylon into the jewel of the ancient world. Glazed blue brick walls rose toward the sky, their surfaces decorated with lions, bulls, and dragons. Processional roads extended for kilometers. Palaces expanded into luxurious compounds. The Great Ziggurat, Etemenanki believed by some to be the origin of the biblical Tower of Babel, was rebuilt to an astonishing height. And somewhere within this urban magnificence, the legendary Hanging Gardens may have taken root. These gardens, described by ancient writers as a lush mountain of greenery suspended above terraces, remain one of history's greatest enigmas. Some scholars think they never existed. Others propose they were built not in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh. Yet the most intriguing theory is that the gardens were real, but subtly different from the versions recorded by Greek historians. Rather than floating gardens irrigated by mysterious machinery, they may have been a sprawling palace complex filled with exotic plants, watered by a sophisticated system of aqueducts, wells, and counterweight mechanisms. A marvel not of magic, but of engineering. If true, the Hanging Gardens would represent the pinnacle of Babylonian mastery over water. They embody the essence of Babylon itself, a place where myth and engineering intertwined so closely that ancient visitors struggled to separate them. But even as Babylon reached its zenith under Nebuchadnezzar, forces beyond the horizon were gathering. The Persian Empire, rising swiftly under Cyrus the Great, sought not just territory, but legitimacy. To conquer Babylon was to inherit the mantle of kingship over the known world. And when Cyrus marched on the city, he understood something critical. Babylon was not a fortress that could be broken by brute force alone. Theoretically tended over, it was a symbol that had to be respected. And so, according to ancient accounts, Cyrus took Babylon not through siege or slaughter, but through strategy and diplomacy. The Euphrates was diverted, the gates were opened, and the city, perhaps weary of internal strife, allowed a new ruler to take his place. Cyrus entered Babylon not as a destroyer, but as a liberator, restoring temples, respecting traditions, and presenting himself as chosen by Marduk. In this moment, even conquest became part of Babylon's mythology. But time is relentless. Empires rise and fall. Dynasties shift. And soon, Babylon's influence began to wane. Yet even in ruins, Babylon remained potent. Greek philosophers wrote about it in awe. Judean exiles remembered it with sorrow and fascination. Roman generals invoked its grandeur. And later, in the medieval and early modern periods, artists and scholars resurrected its memory in paintings, manuscripts, and tales of wonder. But the greatest rediscovery came in the 19th and 20th centuries, when archaeologists finally pierced the sands and rubble that had concealed Babylon's bones for centuries. What they found: walls, inscriptions, gates, temples, palaces, revealed not a mythic fantasy, but a real city, built by real hands, shaped by real ambition. And each discovery pulled Babylon further out of myth and into history. Clay tablets revealed economic records, medical texts, legal codes, astronomical data, and even personal letters, bringing Babylonian voices back to life after thousands of years of silence. Some tablets revealed mathematics far ahead of their time. Others contained spells, prayers, recipes, and instructions for treating illness. And then there were the tablets that shocked the modern world. Tablets describing a complex, algorithmic method for tracking planetary motion, a precursor to calculus created nearly 1,400 years before the technique appeared in Europe. The world had to confront a startling truth. Babylon was not simply ancient. In many ways, it was advanced. And so the legend of Babylon evolved again. The city that once symbolized divine authority, imperial power, and cosmological order became a symbol of human brilliance, proof of humanity's ability to build, to think, to innovate. Yet many secrets remain. Archaeologists still debate the true location of certain monumental structures. The layout of the Hanging Gardens is unresolved. The exact height of the ziggurat is uncertain. Even the voices of Babylon, its poems, songs, stories, and beliefs remain only partly deciphered. Every excavation reveals new mysteries. Sealed rooms, hidden inscriptions, unexplained foundations, layers of older cities beneath the newer ones. Babylon was not built in a single era. It was a palimpsest, layers of civilization stacked over millennia. And in these layers, buried beneath centuries of wind-blown sand, fragments of Babylonian life still lie waiting. And now, across modern Iraq, Babylon is rising once more, not as an empire, but as a heritage preserved for future generations. Restoration efforts, archaeological projects, and digital reconstruction initiatives are breathing life back into the ancient landscape. The Ishtar Gate, now in Berlin, has inspired replicas and virtual reconstructions. Scholars continue to read and translate tablets once thought undecipherable. Because Babylon was never just a city. It was an idea, a dream of human possibility, a testament to our desire to understand the cosmos and shape the earth. It was the belief that we could build something eternal, even though all things eventually fade. And this is the greatest secret of ancient Babylon, that nothing built by human hands lasts forever. But ideas do. Knowledge does. Culture does. And even in ruin, Babylon continues to influence how we think about civilization, power, memory, and the meaning of greatness. But if Babylon's legacy endured across centuries, it is because the city cultivated something rarer than monuments, rarer even than the tablets that outlived their makers. Babylon nurtured a cultural memory, a persistent living story that carried its values far beyond its walls. Even as the city declined, its intellectual heritage seeped into the fabric of later civilizations. Languages evolved, empires shifted, religions rose and fell. Yet somewhere in the background, echoes of Babylon remained. You hear it in the cadence of early legal codes, modeled on the careful structure of Hammurabi's laws. You see it in the astronomical records that inspired Greek mathematicians. You find it in the myths that traveled across deserts and mountains, stories of great floods, divine councils, sacred trees, and epic quests that would later appear in Hebrew scriptures, Persian writings, and even early Islamic tradition. Babylon's mythology became part of humanity's shared inheritance. And in these myths, we discover a deeper truth about Babylon's worldview. To the Babylonians, the cosmos was not an empty void, but a vast, living tapestry. Every star had significance. Every planet carried a meaning. Time itself moved in cycles, repeating ancient patterns that guided human fate. Their calendars were astonishingly precise, their predictions surprisingly accurate. They were among the first to divide the circle into 360 degrees, and the hour into 60 minutes, a mathematical legacy that still shapes every clock in the world today. But while Babylon looked upward for meaning, its people were firmly grounded in the reality of daily life. The city was a marketplace of cultures. Akkadians, Amorites, Arameans, Persians, Jews, Greeks, Egyptians, Anatolians, and traders from distant lands passed through its gates. Each brought their customs, languages, gods, and stories. Its streets echoed with 1,000 tongues. Its markets overflowed with ivory from Africa, tin from Anatolia, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, spices from Arabia, and silk-like fabrics from far beyond the Iranian plateau. Babylon was not just a political powerhouse, it was a cultural crossroads, a civilization that thrived on exchange. And this cosmopolitan environment fueled innovation. Physicians tested treatments. Architects experimented with new materials. Mathematicians refined their calculations. Priests cataloged everything from illnesses to weather patterns. And writers, scribes who trained for decades chronicled the city's triumphs and tragedies in cuneiform script. Babylon was a city that believed knowledge should be preserved, categorized, and transmitted. And in that mission, it became a kind of ancient university. Yet, for all this sophistication, Babylon remained vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of history. Floods ravaged its fields. Rival empires coveted its wealth. Internal divisions weakened its unity. And the shifting Euphrates, never fully tamed, sometimes abandoned the very channels that sustained the city's heart. But perhaps the most profound threat to Babylon came from within, from a gradual erosion of the cosmological framework that once held its society together. As new religions and philosophies spread across the Near East, the old gods of Babylon lost their central authority. Marduk, once the supreme deity of empire, faded into obscurity. Temples that had stood for 1,000 years fell silent. And with the collapse of the old rituals, the city's sense of cosmic purpose began to dissolve. The Persian kings, though respectful of Babylonian traditions, introduced new administrative structures and religious ideas. Later, when Alexander the Great envisioned making Babylon his eastern capital, he unwittingly set in motion another transformation. His generals squabbled for control, his empire fractured, and Babylon became a battleground for ambitions too large to sustain. In the centuries that followed, Seleucid rulers attempted to preserve the city's grandeur but lacked the resources or stability to succeed. Parthians governed from afar. Nomadic tribes passed through its ruins. And Rome, though fascinated by Babylon's past, never managed to restore its former glory. Over time, the Euphrates shifted again, leaving the once mighty city stranded far from the water that had nurtured it. Houses collapsed, temples crumbled. Wind and sand settled over streets where kings once walked. Babylon, the city that had claimed eternity, entered a silence that lasted nearly 2,000 years. And yet, Babylon never truly died. Its memory persisted in the collective imagination of the world. In Jewish tradition, Babylon became a symbol of exile and longing. In Christian writings, it became a metaphor for corruption, power, and human pride. In Islamic scholarship, it appeared as a place of ancient wisdom and magical knowledge. Medieval travelers spoke of it in hushed tones, believing it to be a land of sorcery. Renaissance scholars debated its geography and significance, and Enlightenment thinkers, armed with new maps and ancient texts, began to suspect that Babylon, though in ruins, still lay buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. Those suspicions were confirmed in the 19th century when European explorers uncovered the city's forgotten foundations. Thick walls of baked brick, fragments of the processional way, the remnants of Nebuchadnezzar's palace, massive, imposing, and still adorned with traces of glazed tiles, and inscriptions. So many inscriptions, bearing witness to centuries of kings, rituals, floods, wars, and astronomical observations. But the most iconic discovery occurred when archaeologists uncovered the foundations of the Ishtar Gate, the majestic blue gateway adorned with lions, dragons, and bulls. Piece by piece, these glazed bricks were transported to museums, where they were reassembled into one of the most breathtaking reconstructions in human history. Today, visitors who stand before that gate feel something that words can barely capture: a stirring sense of recognition, as if some ancient part of human memory awakens. For in that moment, one realizes that Babylon was not just a place, but a turning point in the story of civilization. Its systems of writing, law, science, architecture, astronomy, agriculture, and governance formed the backbone of the ancient Near East, influencing cultures across continents. But perhaps the greatest secret of Babylon lies in how it continues to shape the modern world. Every time we track a calendar, divide time into minutes, measure angles in degrees, or look to the stars for answers, we inherit the legacy of Babylonian thought. Every legal system that codifies laws owes a debt to Hammurabi. Every library, archive, and institution of scholarship echoes the traditions of ancient scribes. Even the very idea that the universe moves in predictable patterns, governed by cycles that humans can observe and understand, has roots in Babylonian astronomy. And so, when we speak of Babylon today, we are not merely recounting ancient history. We are engaging with a chapter of the human story that remains startlingly relevant. For in Babylon, we see the origins of questions we still ask. How should societies be governed? How do we understand the cosmos? How can knowledge be preserved across generations? And how should we balance power with morality? These questions defined Babylon's rise and fall, and in many ways, they define our world today. But there is another layer to Babylon's allure, a mystery that transcends time. What is it about this ancient city that continues to captivate the imagination? Why do artists, writers, filmmakers, and historians return to it again and again? Perhaps it is because Babylon embodies the tension between human ambition and human frailty. It represents the heights of cultural achievement and the depths of political conflict. It is a mirror through which we see ourselves, our dreams, our triumphs, our mistakes. Babylon's walls may have crumbled, but its story remains intact. And like all great stories, it evolves with every generation that revisits it. Each new discovery, each translated tablet, each archaeological survey peels back another layer of the mystery. Babylon continues to reveal itself slowly, carefully, as though the city still guards its secrets. And yet, beyond the ruins and fragments, one truth becomes clear. Babylon was never simply a relic of the past. It was a testament to what humanity can achieve when creativity, curiosity, and determination converge. It was a beacon of innovation in a world still awakening from prehistory. But Babylon's legacy is not only in what it accomplished, it is in what it questioned. It forced thinkers to confront the fragility of power, the complexity of human society, and the limits of knowledge. It challenged kings, priests, scholars, and citizens to see their world not as static, but as a dynamic interplay of forces, natural, divine, and human. And that spirit, that restless pursuit of understanding, became the city's most enduring gift. In the end, the story of ancient Babylon is not merely the tale of a city, but the chronicle of civilization finding its shape. From its earliest foundations along the banks of the Euphrates, Babylon rose as a place where ambition met imagination. It was a world where priests mapped the heavens, where scholars cataloged the order of nature, where kings strove to sculpt eternity from brick and stone, and where traders from every corner of the ancient world walked its bustling streets. Babylon became the birthplace of laws that shaped empires, the cradle of mathematics that still governs our calendars and clocks, and the stage upon which some of humanity's oldest myths unfolded. Its ziggurats mirrored mountains of creation. Its gate became a canvas of divine power. Its tablets preserved millennia of thought. And its gardens, whether real, symbolic, or lost to time, became an enduring metaphor for human ingenuity rising against the limits of nature. For centuries, it stood as a center of power, culture, astronomy, architecture, and intellectual advancement. And even when empires conquered it, even when floods threatened it, even when time eroded it, Babylon refused to disappear. Its decline reminds us of the impermanence of all things built by human hands. The shifting river, the changing gods, the ambitions of foreign rulers. All of these forces chipped away at Babylon's material form, but its ideas proved indestructible. Babylon taught the world how to measure time, how to systematize knowledge, how to govern societies, how to observe the heavens, and how to dream beyond the horizon. And so, the greatest secret of ancient Babylon is not found in its vanished gardens or lost temples, but in the message its ruins whisper across the ages, that the true legacy of a civilization lies not in its walls, but in its wisdom, not in its monuments, but in its ideas, not in its kings, but in its culture. Babylon may lie silent beneath the soil of modern Iraq, but its influence surrounds us in the numbers we use, in the stories we tell, in the laws we live by, and in the enduring human desire to understand our place in the universe. Its spirit survives in every question we ask about origins, destiny, and the meaning of greatness. And as we close this journey through time, one truth remains clear. Babylon was never just a city. It was a turning point in human history, a testament to creativity, complexity, and resilience. A reminder that even in ruins, the echoes of the past can still guide the future. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to explore more ancient mysteries, forgotten empires, and lost chapters of our shared human story, be sure to subscribe and join us on the next journey into the ancient world.